Have you ever just sat down and thought about Australia? Exactly. You haven't. That's what I thought. Nobody has. But if you really sit down and think to yourself, where did Australia even come from? It's surprisingly a really good question. Imagine having to go on a long, dangerous journey across the ocean to a land unknown, possibly on a ship filled with criminals. Imagine getting there. Where are you going to go? How are you going to provide a living for yourself? Keep you and your family safe? How are you going to eat? These are many problems many of these European settlers had to face when they arrived in Australia. Alright, so the discovery of Australia occurred around 1606. Between 1606 and 1770, 54 ships made contact with Australia. One of these ships were captained by a man of the name Abel Tasman. Tasman was born around 1603 and grew up to become part of the Dutch East India Company. When Tasman arrived in 1642, he was ordered to charter parts of the north, west, and south coast of Australia. These lands became known as New Holland. In 1770, the H.M. Bark Endeavour arrived in Australia. The man who commanded the ship was Lieutenant James Cook from Britain. Cook was born October 27, 1728. Cook arrived with specific orders from King George III to charter Eastern Australia. August 22, 1770, Eastern Australia was chartered. On February 14, 1779, James Cook was unfortunately assassinated by natives in Hawaii. The first fleet to get to Australia arrived at Botany Bay in 1788. The man in charge of this fleet was Captain Arthur Phillipps of Britain. Arthur Phillipps was born October 11, 1738. The fleet consisted of 11 ships with an estimated 1,350 sailors on board. The ratio of men to women on board was an astonishing 4-1. Soon after their arrival, Captain Arthur Phillipps became Governor Phillipps of New South Wales. Governor Phillipps ordered the first ever colony in Australia, but they had one problem. There weren't enough supplies to create it. Luckily for Phillipps, Britain was sending a second fleet with more supplies for the colony. Unfortunately, the second fleet was named the Death Fleet. It got its name due to significant amounts of fatalities along the journey. In 1791, George Vancouver claimed the Albany region in Western Australia for King George III. In 1801, Matthew Flinders, a sailor, came into contact with the Aboriginals. Aboriginals are native people to Australia. Relations between the Aboriginal people and the colonists were very good. They traded things like food, water, tools, cloths, and artifacts. These relations went on for a little while until the Aboriginal people realized how valuable and vital the colonists' land was to them. Between 1790 and 1810, the colonists suffered multiple attacks from the Aboriginal people. The colony of New South Wales was a penal colony from 1788 to 1823. This meant that the colony was made up of mostly convicts, Marines, and Marine spouses. When 1823 finally rolled around, the British government finally established a New South Wales Parliament, which consisted of a legislative council and a Supreme Court. The New South Wales Act of 1823 is what allowed this to occur. New South Wales created civil and criminal courts trying to establish English law. The first successful criminal court case occurred in July of 1788 when a convict couple sued a ship captain over a lost parasol. They were able to do this because of the establishment of English law in New South Wales. In 1850, the discovery of gold boosted New South Wales's economy, and it also boosted Britain's economy. This discovery also increased the population tremendously because it brought many new settlers in search for wealth and riches. It also brought many skilled workers to the colony, also in search for wealth and riches. At one point, gold exports were more than wool. One colony, named Victoria, which was founded in 1803 by John Batman, produced 1/3 of the world's gold, making it one of the largest gold exporters in the world. In 1861, the government passed the Crown Lands Act. This stated that it will allow any person to choose up to 320 acres of land. But there was a catch. They had to pay a deposit for their land and live on it for at least 3 years. 1870 is when the country began to thrive. Economic and population increases are what allowed this to occur. Railroads began being built, and they gained much more land. Advances in farming had become much more efficient. Also, new farming techniques allowed for better quality crops. Other colonies that were in Australia were Van Diemen's Land, which was established in 1825 but later became known as Tasmania, Western Australia, a penal settlement founded in 1827 by Edmund Lockyer, and the first governor was Captain James Stirling. Southern Australia, which was established in 1836 but became a crown colony in 1842. An estimated 38,000 immigrants arrived there by 1850. Queensland, a penal colony established in 1824 by Lieutenant John Oxley, and in 1859 Queensland separated from New South Wales. And the Northern Territory, which was first settled at Fort Dundas in 1824, and January 1st, 1911, the Northern Territory separated from Southern Australia and became the Commonwealth of Australia. From James Cook declaring New South Wales the first colony in Australia, to the colonists coming into contact with Aboriginals, or New South Wales allowing convicts to testify in court. What about Victoria producing 1/3 of the world's gold? Don't forget the government passing the Crown Lands Act in 1861. I guess you can come to the conclusion that Australia has a pretty interesting history. If you're still interested, go home and research more, which I'm sure none of you really are.